The News at 6, I'm Mike Seela.
And I'm Dawn Baker. Leilani Simon is now a convicted killer.
A Chatham County jury reaching that verdict after deliberating for about 6.5 hours, finding her guilty on all 19 charges related to the murder of her young son and the lies she told police during the investigation. We do have live team coverage tonight. We want to begin with our Flynn Snyder, who is live outside the Chatham County Police Department headquarters in Flynn. What did the chief have to say about the work that went into this investigation?
Well, Mike, good evening. CCPD Chief Jeff Hadley said his officers left no stones unturned during the course of this investigation that really shook and jarred this county and also some nationwide. Chief Hadley spoke earlier today, shortly after that verdict was ready, talked about the impact that this case had not only on the public but also his officers, particularly those who were involved with the landfill search for Quinton's remains back in November 2022, that weeks-long grueling search there. He also said that officers tried to be as thorough as possible to get a case together that could lead to the conviction of guilty on all counts that we did see today. He called Quinton Chatham County's child, acknowledging the impact that this case had and the tough details that came out during the course of the investigation. Earlier, Chief Hadley spoke on what he felt was the deciding factor for jurors that ultimately allowed them to convict Leilani Simon on all 19 counts stemming from the death of her son, Quinton.
Their ability to interview and get information from witnesses, the boyfriend, cell phone technology, they just kept after it. And once you kind of distilled all that down and eliminated some of the other potential possibilities, you could only reach one conclusion, and that Leilani Simon was responsible for the death of her son.
And Chief Hadley called this case the biggest that his department has ever handled. He also thanked the lead detective in this case as well, Detective Marion Lemons, who we heard from several times on the stand during the trial. He says that, while today's verdict in this case still is difficult for some, he says he hopes this verdict brings peace and comfort for those that were impacted by this investigation. We're live tonight outside CCPD headquarters. Flynn Snyder, WTOC News.
Thanks so much, Flynn. Our Shay Schrader joins us now live from outside the Chatham County Courthouse, where prosecutors said they felt relieved by the verdict. Shay, what was the mood after the decision came down?
Yes, definitely a bittersweet moment for the prosecution, who's going to be able to sleep easy tonight after prosecuting this case for 8 days. But all in all, it took around 2.5 weeks from jury selection to the verdict. Prosecutors ultimately able to prove to the jury that Leilani Simon killed her 20-month-old son and threw his body in a dumpster. Now, after the verdict, Assistant District Attorney Jenny Parker described how grueling it was to prosecute this case, especially because of the lack of physical evidence. So prosecution really had to zero in on very tedious things like hundreds and hundreds of points of cell phone data, security camera footage, and text messages between Simon and her then boyfriend Daniel Youngkin, security camera footage from when Youngkin got the call that Quinton was missing. All of these things went into presenting a complete case that eventually did make up for the lack of physical evidence of how Quinton died. Now, the prosecution does say that they believe justice has been served after they examined almost 40 witnesses and presented again almost 100 pieces of evidence over 8 days. Parker delivered the emotional closing argument that was centered around Quinton Simon's humanity. Her remarks, which she says were intended to remind jurors that Quinton was a real living human being, were the last thing that jurors heard before heading to deliberation, of course, other than the charges that they had by the judge. Now, Parker says that despite the strong closing by the prosecution, she was nervous while the jury was deliberating for almost 6.5 hours, and describes to WTOC the moment that she heard the verdict.
It was a relief. It is always a relief when we get a guilty verdict in a serious case like that. That's the only emotion I can describe. It's just relief.
Simon, who I barely saw cry at all during the trial, including in moments where she was faced with photos of her son's Quentin remains after they were recovered from that Chatham County landfill, was seen crying after the verdict was announced, and she was taken out of the courtroom. Now, what's next for her is sentencing. We don't know exactly when that's going to be, but we do know that she is facing life in prison because of the charges that she was facing, including murder, malice murder, felony murder, and concealing the death of another. Of course, we do expect that the defense is going to begin the appeal process at some point, but we will continue following this on WTOC, so stick with us for those updates. For now, live outside the Chatham County Courthouse, Shay Schrader, WTOC News.
Thank you so much, Shay, for that coverage. We also have all the coverage of every day of this trial, as well as the verdict announcement on our website and on WTOC Plus. Just look for this story on our homepage or the Quentin Simon case page.
Right now, we do want to give you a live